Hi, it's Sean, and you're listening to The 3-Month Vacation. When you ask someone which is superior, one-on-one consulting or group consulting, the answer is always skewed towards one-on-one consulting. It seems correct. It seems like you're getting the full attention of the teacher, the trainer. And this belief is strong because we learned early how classrooms worked. When you went to school, you were in a group, and some people did well in that setting, and others got left behind. However, a classroom is not a group. It happens to have a whole bunch of people, but in reality, it's a silo. Yes, it's true that the teacher instructs the entire group, but you don't learn when you are instructed. You learn when you have to implement the task. And that's when everything goes into a silo. You do your homework in a silo by yourself. Every test is given individually. Every exam is marked by the teacher with nobody seeing the work except for one person, that's your teacher. But group training, when properly constructed, allows everyone to see each other's work and to learn from each other. You have to have 3 elements that make the group consulting work. You can't just say, oh, group consulting is better than one-on-one consulting or training. You have to have elements. And these 3 elements are, 1, feedback has to be distributed so no one person feels overwhelmed. The second is how the group learns from a large pool of mistakes. And third, why the group must stay together. Let's start out with the first one, which is feedback is distributed. When feedback comes just from the teacher, it can quickly become discouraging. A teacher might point out several issues at once. Fix this, adjust this, correct this proportion, darken the shadows. Even when the intention is helpful, too much correction from one source becomes demoralizing. And this changes in a group setting. Feedback becomes distributed. Instead of a single authority pointing out every problem, different students notice different things. One person may mention composition, another may point out to the proportion, and someone else may notice shading or balance. Now, this feedback comes to that client, that individual client, in smaller pieces and from several directions, so it feels lighter. And this kind of group feedback has another advantage. When students give feedback, they are forced to explain what they see. When students give each other feedback, they sharpen their own understanding. In many ways, students learn the most when they are explaining something to someone else. So teaching, even in small moments, deepens the learning. And this is one of the big reasons why you have to have group learning. Everybody comes in from different angles with little bits of feedback, and it makes the learning experience exponential. You're able to fix the mistakes at a much faster rate than one person going, fix this, fix that, everything. It's very frustrating for a student when there's one person giving those commands. This takes us to the second part, which is the group learns from a large pool of mistakes. Everyone in a class makes mistakes. It's part of the learning process. If a student makes 2 or 3 mistakes a week, a class of 20 students might generate 60 mistakes or 50 mistakes or whatever, but they generate a huge number of mistakes. Now that sounds like a problem, but it's actually a powerful advantage. Each mistake becomes a lesson for the entire group. But notice one thing. You're only making 3 mistakes at a time, and you're learning from all the other mistakes. Because it's someone else's mistake, you don't have the pressure to fix it right away. So you can fix it today, tomorrow, next week, whenever. That pressure to fit everything in today's schedule that goes away. The student may make the same mistake over and over again, but it was somebody else's mistake, and they may correct it after weeks. During that time, everyone else continues to observe the correction process. Over several weeks, those mistakes are gradually eliminated. At the same time, the students move slightly ahead of the group. Their work improves faster, and this quietly raises the standard for everyone. And raising the standard makes a huge difference. When you're working with an individual and you're doing one-on-one consulting, then the standard is only that individual's capacity. So they do the test, they reach their capacity, that's the end of the story. But when everybody can see everybody else's work, and one person starts to move ahead, followed by the second and the third, the entire group standard goes up. The gap is not huge, but it is enough for others to see what the next level looks like. The result is, as I said, the entire group improves together, and the teacher's job becomes easier because the learning is happening in many directions at once. However, there is one other parameter which is very important, and that is the group can't move at different paces. They must move forward together. Let's look at this third point as well. For group consulting to work well, the group must progress at roughly the same pace. If one person moves far ahead of everyone else, that group starts to fracture. The gap becomes too large, and the shared learning environment weakens. But when the differences remain small, the group feels safe. When the group moves together and feels safe within that space, group consulting becomes extraordinarily powerful. In comparison, one-on-one consulting is a silo. It doesn't feel like a silo, but it's just stuck in so many ways. The student rarely moves beyond their own existing standard. It's very important to note that students aren't always comfortable showing their work and making mistakes. Let's say you're doing a 12-week course or training situation. About halfway, if you've been the teacher that you're supposed to be, well, then people start to feel more relaxed and they give suggestions. But they need to go some distance into the journey. They need to trust themselves before they start to trust others. And once they get to that halfway mark, then it becomes a collective journey. They show up for each other rather than for you, who's the big expert. When this sense of safety exists, group consulting becomes extremely powerful. Everyone learns from everyone else. By contrast, one-on-one consulting becomes like your school classroom. The student sees only their own progress and their own mistakes. For most of us, these one-on-one mistakes are too many to fix. So we work on what we can manage and then we leave the rest. Without the presence of others moving slightly ahead or struggling with different problems, the learning tends to plateau. Learning is not about the teaching, it's about the doing. We are so enamored with one-to-one coaching that we fail to see the superior value in group consulting. It's very likely that when you start out your business, and even if your business has lasted for a while, you're considering training or some sort of consulting and you're doing it one-on-one. And there is a kind of plateau there because you only have so much time. Group consulting is useful for various reasons, greater amount of income, but mostly having more time. However, these 3 points, they're crucial. The first is you need to have distributed feedback. In a group, students can give each other small, manageable feedback instead of being overwhelmed by the teacher who corrects everything. The second point is just the variety of mistakes. Everyone makes different mistakes. So in a group, these mistakes become lessons for the entire class. Over time, some students move slightly ahead and then they raise the bar for everybody. That standard just goes up. And at the same time, you as a teacher, your workload is reduced. Finally, you have to ensure that people don't rush ahead. They might be raising the standard, but they can't just go crazy. The group must progress at roughly the same pace. One person going too far ahead and the group just fractures. When students move together, they feel safe. They give feedback and they learn collectively. And this is why group consulting is so useful. You can see this group consulting on any of our courses. We've been doing this for the last 20 years or more. And for instance, we have the storytelling course coming up. Now, in that storytelling course, you'll see how everybody enters and they're unsure because they assume that one-on-one consulting would be better, but they have no choice because the whole thing is a group. And what they find is that they don't want to swap group consulting for one-on-one consulting. And you might be wondering, how would people not get lost in a group? Because that's what we all have experienced. At school, in university, working in a job, it's always the group that's the problem. So we're going to find out in the next podcast some of the objections that come up for group consulting and how those objections are just perceptions that can be easily overcome, and it will move you towards group consulting in the future. This is good for you and it's good for your client. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this podcast. Let's find out what's happening in psychotactics land. We're going to have the storytelling workshop and the seats are available on the 11th of April. Yes, it's pretty soon. What you need to do is go to psychotactics.com/workshop/storytelling and sign up. You'll get some goodies, which will help you anyway, even if you don't sign up. But when you sign up, you're going to get 2 courses in one. The first is you're going to learn how group consulting works while you're in the course. So it's pretty meta that way. And the second thing is you're going to become a good storyteller. I've already mentioned this before, but storytelling is super crucial. In this age of AI, the only thing that is going to mark you out from all of the auto-generated stuff is the ability to tell your stories, but also stories from history, science, etc. Every story needs to have that power. And if you're writing content, then you need to know also how to connect the story. So you've told a story, but now you need to go to the rest of the article. How are you going to do that? This is all on the storytelling course. Again, psychotactics.com/workshops/storytelling. I'll say bye for now. Bye-bye.